Steering wheel, somebody tell him to give it to me.
There's something loose between my legs.
I don't know. Let go!
I'm heavier than a freaking boat.
Nothing he's could say could make that any better.
Yeah, nobody. No more radio for the rest of the race.
I'm going home.
Hello and welcome to DRS FC, an F1 podcast by soccer nerds. I am André Carlisle, one soccer nerd, and I'm here with another soccer nerd, Donald Wine. Donald, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm tired. I was in Vegas, not for the race, and just now getting to family for Thanksgiving. So, I'm a step slow today. But there's a lot to talk about with this upcoming race with Qatar, because I think even though that the Drivers' Championship is done, there's still a lot to race for, and a lot of guys who can still mess things up for themselves.
I love that clarification. Not necessarily for others, but definitely
for others, for themselves, yeah. Others is part of that. Yeah, they can do that too, but no, look within.
Yeah, the likelihood is maybe that it'll be themselves. But yeah, so I'm glad you are here, because this is kind of an interesting race to talk about. Let's just run through the history of the Qatar GP real quick, because I do think it is kind of an interesting track, and we'll get to the track characteristics, but I'll just tell you how it came about. The first Grand Prix run in Qatar was in 2021. The World Cup yeeted it in 2022, but it came back in 2023 on a 10-year contract to be part of the calendar for 10 years. Money kind of talks. Australia pulled out when there was COVID, and they were like, nope, no thanks. I think there's a bit too much sickness flying around. And Qatar was like, we have money and we have a track. Here you go. And that's the history of the Qatar Grand Prix.
Yeah, it's very, very short, and it's you almost forget about it because it's so new, and it hasn't fallen into a part of the calendar, right? It's not always like the second to last. It's second to last this year, but last year was in October, so You're not really prepping for it like you would a Monaco or Vegas or something like that. Even Vegas is new. We kind of know when it's going to be, so it's kind of just said, hey, we're on the schedule. Throw us where you need us. But the fact is we're still on it. And I think that's what they care about now until they eventually settle into what could be a format for the schedule.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the track itself, because the track is a little bit interesting. It's got an extremely long straight. It only has one DRS zone. There are a lot of slow corners, a lot of medium kind of corners, but it's kind of it has a straight, and then it has some technical pieces, and then it's back to the straight. It is 3.36 miles. They'll be doing 57 laps on that, and Max Verstappen has the lap record, which he set last year, 1 minute 24.319. Anything about this track that you particularly like or dislike?
I think I don't like that there's only one DRS zone. Of course, we're DRS FC. We like having that opportunity. I do like that it is a longer straightaway so that you still have a chance. But even still, right, like the DRS zone only covers about close to 2/3 of that straight. So there's still an opportunity. If you don't get there, you got to hope that you can kind of ride that wave past somebody. But I do like that there's some corners where guys can take some risks. And as we saw last year, there's a lot of guys who took risks and it didn't work out for them. But there's opportunities to overtake people. And it's not a street race where you're kind of in corners and trying to, hope somebody ahead of you messes up. There's opportunity for guys here to overtake people.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting thing that you mentioned in terms of street racing. That tends to be like the knock on the street races is just there's not a lot of area to overtake, especially because you don't want to get too close to a wall, Franco Colapinto. Right. But I think in Vegas, we saw a lot of overtakes, and that was cool. That was kind of like the perfect mix of street circuit and racing. So I was really happy about that. I'm kind of with you on the track, and I hope that we get to see some risks being taken, because you do kind of have to get your overtakes done some other place other than a straight, especially if you probably want them to stick. Because, all right, I know the F1 manager and the games that I play, like the F1 24 or whatever, they're not real life. But at this track, the thing that always bothers me is that basically whoever's behind and has DRS overtakes on the straight. And then you go around the lap, and then you come back, and now you're behind. You got DRS, you overtake on the straight. And it's like, it just keeps happening that way. And I know we're going to see a lot of overtakes there, but I hope we see more throughout the rest of the track, because that's where the real racing happens.
Yeah, and I think that's part you mentioned, the technical part of the racing, right? Anyone can, just gun it on the straight with the DRS and hope you can overtake. But the technical part is, who are the better drivers that can overtake somebody on one of these turns? Because, again, some of these turns are set up where that's possible. And I think we'll see, hopefully, some technical driving out there as opposed to just the use of DRS and the use of speed on the straight to get past your guy.
Yeah, and there is a lot of runoff area here too, so you can take some risk, get back on the track, and not worry about hitting a wall or losing a ton of places. So hopefully we do get to see some guys take some risks out there, because I also think there might be a few drivers that have something to prove.
I was going to say, is there any gravel on this track? I don't remember, but I'm just looking out for Lance Stroll here. I don't know. Just want to make sure that he's confident in his driving abilities this weekend.
That is thoughtful of you. I don't think there's gravel. I think there might be. I think they even shaved down some of the curves, so I think you might see some. I think you might see some cars going off the track and not really impacting them too much. Maybe getting some dust or something like that, and it's ultimately fine. But yeah, Lance Stroll will probably not have any gravel. Will not get stuck in a gravel trap. Whatever else he does, I don't know. I'm not going to rule anything else
Welcome to 12th
place. Right, but gravel, he won't be stuck there. One other interesting thing before we talk about what happened in this race last year. Well, actually, let's talk about what happened in the race last year, at least from a temperature standpoint.
Yeah.
This was an incredibly hot, incredibly dangerous race last year. Like you mentioned, it happened early October. It was October 6th through the 8th. On October 6th, it was 105 degrees. On October 7th, it was 101 degrees. And for the race, it was 103 degrees. Now, that's really hot. Now, obviously, tracks get even hotter because you got engines, you got the heat of all the cars going around. You just have so much happening that tracks really ramp up in heat. And then, of course, inside the cockpit where the drivers are, it's even hotter. So there were a lot of unfortunate reports about drivers being sick, drivers losing a ton of weight as well. And honestly, I don't think it was a great look for F1 as well. So that could be why they pushed the race back this year, because I was looking at it and I was absolutely shocked at the weather report. 76 degrees Friday, 77 degrees Saturday and Sunday. That's much better.
Yeah, and I remember last year, I don't know if this tied into just that particular race, but I remember Lewis Hamilton being on a talk show, and they're kind of saying like, "Hey, what do you do to stay in shape when you're in there?" And he's like, "Guys, I have to sometimes drink, 200 ounces of water because I'll lose 7 kilograms of water weight during a race, and especially the hot ones, I have to even figure out how to make that balance work even more because there's no air. I mean, guys are wearing masks, right? They're wearing helmets. There's no way to pump cool air, cool water into those helmets, and I think that can also affect driving, right? Everyone's been in the heat where you kind of start, getting that vertigo kind of feel. Imagine that when you're driving a 200 mile an hour car. So that is a definite concern, but again, hopefully alleviated by the fact that they've pushed it back later in the calendar.
Yeah, and I think having water is kind of a basic thing, but they do need to come up with. And I think I did see something where F1 may have approved a cooling suit of some sort. I don't know if that's for specifically now or when that's going to be in place. But if they're going to keep having these races in the desert, like I said, now the weather seems to be much better now. This time of year, especially for a race, but there are quite a few races throughout the season that get unbearably hot. Miami, thinking about the race in Miami in the middle of the summer, that one's another brutal race for the drivers as well. And on some level, it's like, yeah, they're athletes, but on another level, you're like, can we also just not do the most dangerous thing possible?
Yeah, and Singapore is always like 80 degrees, right? They're right at the equator. So it's always a hot and sticky 80 degrees. But also, I wish Deepti were here because she would talk about how it affects the tires, right? We just got done with a race in the desert where it was in the 50s and 60s, and they had to figure out how to make these tires work with the ground and the friction. And now that it's a little bit warmer, right? Like you still will have that, but when it was hot, it was almost the opposite effect. You had guys coming in earlier because their tires were melting due to the heat. So it's a very interesting way to look at it. The temperature can affect, and again, a 5-degree temperature bump up or down can affect the race in so many ways and affect the strategy of all these teams.
Yeah, and again, like it is a desert, so you'll be looking at dust as well on the track. That sometimes is a factor as well in terms, especially if you don't have your tires up to temperature quickly enough, the car can slide around, and of course that can be a problem when you're going 200 miles per hour. Let's talk about results from last year. Kind of look at that race. Not that there's too many parallels to be taken, but it is kind of interesting to always kind of look back. Again, this is a sprint weekend, so this is the last sprint race of the season. There's only one other race in the season anyway, but this is a sprint race. So you got one practice session, then you have the sprint qualifying, then you have the sprint race on Saturday, and then you have GP qualifying on Saturday, and then, of course, the Grand Prix on Sunday. So it's a really truncated timeline. And, of course, it's a middle of a triple header, so they just did Vegas. So not a whole lot of time to change and update the cars, which we'll get into. That could be interesting when it comes to looking at some of these constructors battles as well. But 2023, Max Verstappen won. I feel like you could just guess if it's a race that happened in 2023, Max Verstappen probably won it, and you would be correct.
At least 19 out of 23, you'd get it right. So
yeah, I know, right? It's like, yep, that's pretty much what happened. But there were some other notable things. Piastri was second in the Grand Prix. Norris was third. George Russell was fourth. Charles Leclerc was in fifth, and Fernando Alonso came up at sixth. I know I say that like I'm surprised. I know he's a great driver, but that Aston Martin was really good last year, not good this year. So it's a little surprising based on just this year's perspective. And then Joe, he got points in this race, man. He finished ninth. It's like, yo, that was great. A great thing to look, because I don't remember it. My memory, my memory is bad these days, so I didn't remember it. And when I saw it, it was like I saw it for the first time. I was like, hey, Joe got points.
I remember them being like super animated. It's like the meme of the guy getting the pop of the champagne and celebrating like in 12th place. Like that's kind of what it was. But like, again, it was a big deal for them because if I remember correctly at that time, they were still unsure of whether Joe was going to remain part of that team. And so that kind of helped him, finalize the contract for this season.
And then what happened? We won't talk about that. I know, right?
They can hear you.
It was all nice in the moment. We don't need to put all the relevant. What happened after that? We don't need to talk about that right now. Carlos Sainz did not start in this race. That's also interesting. Lewis Hamilton and Logan Sargent DNF'd in this race. McLaren also had an interesting record. They set the pit stop record, 1.8 seconds for Lando Norris pit stop. That's usually like Red Bull territory. So it was kind of like, maybe that was the first glimmer of like McLaren's really getting their shit together, because that's kind of the thing with Red Bull. That was almost like their last thing. Like they've always been good at pit stops, but well-oiled machine. Like they would come in and Max would lose like no time at all. Like perfect pit stop almost every single time. And it was just like they have no weaknesses.
And if you remember last year, there was obviously times where Verstappen was so far ahead that he could do an extra pit stop.
Yeah.
Kind of to give them work, right? Like kind of like, hey, let's keep practicing the pit stops because we got time. He'd have like 30 seconds and he would lose anything by coming in another time. And guys were trying to figure out how, again, in this type of sport, every thousandth of a second is crucial. And so these pit stops being as quick as they can be the difference between a guy getting second and getting fifth. Sometimes we've seen, people lose several places because they had an extra long pit stop. And I'm not even saying like an 8-second one. I'm talking like 3.1, right? And someone has a 2.4 and all of a sudden that becomes the difference between third and fifth or third and eighth, or staying in the points. So McLaren getting it together, I'm sure they're going to be replaying that to their pit crew, saying, "Hey, remember last year? Let's have that feeling again. We're not trying to set another record here. That'd be awesome. But let's try and get these 2-second ones out the door, so that our guys can continue going for this drivers' championship."
Yeah, 1.8 feels like it can't be done any faster than that. I mean,
yeah, it feels like a blink. Like,
yeah,
this is done. Like,
that's outrageous. That's an outrageous thing. But also, just thinking of how much Max dominated, the fact that this man was just like in multiple races, just like, should I come in and give him some practice? I'm like, yo, this can't be.
You gotta fight. You gotta fight him afterwards.
Yeah, it's like, this is ridiculous. I remember him saying that before, and I was just like, man.
Even the pit crew's like, yo, man, like, we don't need no extra practice. Don't put this on us. Like,
no, right?
Don't do that.
It's just, yeah. I'm even though Max won again, I'm so thankful that it was different this time around. I'll just say that. Let's get into the sprint results, because there were also some interesting things. McLaren again. Oscar Piastri won the sprint race. Max was second, though. Lando was third, so you had kind of a McLaren sandwich there. George Russell fourth, Lewis Hamilton fifth, and Carlos Sainz sixth. Sergio Checo Perez crashed in the sprint race. So,
well, if you remember this game. This was in October last year. Verstappen actually clinched the championship on the sprint because Checo crashed in the second lap. So he was the only one close. So the fact that we had a race that was over in early October on a Saturday, like on a sprint where you're going for 8 points.
Oh, nobody wants
as opposed
that.
to this year, right, where we did get to the third from last race of the year, for there to be declared a drivers' championship winner at least. And so, again, this just goes to show that how much some of these teams have stepped up over the last year. And now that there's a constructors' championship that is up for grabs, who's going to take it? And I think this is going to be the sprint is going to be the last chance for them to kind of steal points from some of the other teams.
You know what's funny too is I looked it up when I saw that crash, and I did see that it basically secured the title for Max, which again, happening on a Saturday in a sprint race is, and because your teammate crashed, it's just some like,
right.
That's just awful. Like, that's just a bad look. Like, it's hard to celebrate that. But also, Perez was still like 177 points behind. So like, it's not like it was just mathematical at that point. And because it was no longer mathematical because he crashed, it was just like, all right, well, here we go. But and I'm guessing maybe that's why they were really pumping this thing up at the Vegas race, because they know if you can do big, extravagant, and gaudy anywhere, you can do it. At Vegas is the perfect place to do that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, makes sense. All right, Donald, did you want to talk about anything else about this track or the race last year, the sprint, or anything before we take a break and get into what we expect in this race?
Well, I know in the sprint last year, there were five drivers that had to retire due to various things, collisions, spin-offs, and stuff like that. So I'm wondering if the sprint this year, again, like you mentioned, going to be a 30-degree difference almost in temperature. But I wonder if, because the stakes are still high for the Constructors' Championship, also the sixth place scrap that we're going to talk about after the break probably, I wonder if that encourages, or at least for the sprint race, right, try to take some risks and try to kind of gun it and go for it, because it's a shorter, what the sprint's 19 laps or something like that, so it's a shorter distance to travel, but also it's those points are going to be ever crucial in getting fastest laps and stuff like that, or things that teams might be focused on just to take points away from somebody else and add them to their total. So I'm wondering if the sprint's going to be kind of chaos compared to the Grand Prix, because again, a fight over several small points, but knowing that this will set them up for perhaps going for it next week.
Yeah, and I had to look it up because you mentioned the DNFs in that sprint race, and yeah, you were 100% right. I'm kind of jealous of your memory, honestly. I know I talked about mine earlier, but yeah, you're crushing me right now. 5 DNFs in that sprint race. It was Nico Hulkenberg, Esteban Ocon, Sergio Perez, Logan Sargent, and Liam Lawson was a DNF in this one. So yeah, 5 DNFs in that sprint race. Wow.
If I remember correctly, Liam Lawson did not have a great weekend in Qatar last time. And I know he was subbing in at that time for Danny Rick, but I think he was. I'm looking at the results. He didn't. Obviously, he failed to finish the sprint, and then he was dead last in the actual race. So I know he's got to come into this one and say, hey, I need to do quite a bit better to show that I've improved from that showing last year.
Yeah, no doubt. Okay. All right, let's take a quick break and talk about what to expect in this weekend with the last sprint race of the weekend of the year and the Grand Prix. We'll be back. All right, one thing that I really love about, like, even now, with the Drivers' Championship has been won, Max was lauded. They brought out the T-shirts. They did the whole thing in Vegas. The Rolls Royces, or were they Rolls Royces or Bentleys? What were they in?
They were
Bentleys.
Phantoms.
They looked like Rolls Royces to me. Okay. Yeah. I was like, I kind of know my very luxury cars for no good reason because I'll never be in one. but I know what they look like.
I was just there. I did not find them. I was not offered a ride in a Phantom. I'm very disappointed.
They weren't part of the Uber.
They were. It was not. Yeah, it was not Uber.
Not
Uber Phantom.
Okay. No. Damn, they got to work on that.
Work on it.
But yeah, so even though that happened, there's still things to look at, right? It's like, I know that the thing for us is paying attention to soccer the way that we do. There are so many other things that are important than just like who wins the shield. There's also cup competitions. There's also individual team competitions, because some teams know they're not going to win. They're not lifting a shield or a championship, but you still have something to battle. And you want to beat those that are kind of your nearest rivals, right? So there's still a lot of that to go on. And in the Drivers' Championship, even though Max won and Lando is no longer a threat to any of that, he'll have to wait until 2025, where I think a lot of people are going to be vying for that championship. But he's got to hold off Charles Leclerc, because Lando has 340 points. Leclerc has 319. In a sprint weekend, that's doable. Right? Because there's going to be a number of points on the line. So that is doable if Leclerc can get up there, get a lot of points, and all you need is really Lando to DNF in one of those, and he takes on and Leclerc takes maximum points. That's a lot. So 340 to 319 is that gap. And then you also have another McLaren driver, 268, Oscar Piastri, and then Carlos Sainz has 259. So he's even closer. They could swap positions easily this weekend. So looking at that, do you expect any movement in those? Because honestly, like with the drivers, it doesn't really matter, but it is a point of pride.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wonder if also, again, the Constructors' Championship has a lot to do with this as well, because you mentioned the gap between Lando and Leclerc is 21 points. Between Piastri and Sainz, it's 9 points. And in the Constructors' race, McLaren is 608. Ferrari at 584, so we're talking 16 points. So this is a really big deal for, 24 points is separating them. So again, if Ferrari has a really good weekend, all of those places flip, right? Sainz goes to third, Leclerc goes to fourth, Leclerc goes to second, and Ferrari has the baton with 1 week to go. And so that's why, again, I think, and also Ferrari and McLaren have both in the last few weeks, if you've noticed, have pretty much kind of done tandems, right? They're finishing 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever that is, right? They're kind of together and going after each other. And so to maximize the points, do they have a strategy where they say, hey, let's let Leclerc go first and then Sainz, and we can pull both of you guys over the edge, and then in the process have us leapfrog McLaren? Or is it, again, with 2 races to go, with Sainz leaving, everything's on the table, anything goes? Like, it's a big question for Ferrari, and also really for Carlos Sainz and how he deals with that, right? Because the last few weeks it hasn't been going in his favor in regards to like team strategy, and sometimes he's just like, I'm just going to do this anyway because I'm Carlos Sainz. I'm the man. So I wonder if this is going to be a case where he kind of says 2 races to go, I'm just going to go for mine, and that will also help the team.
Yeah, and we heard Leclerc's radio was like the talk of the Vegas GP. So like something is up there, and this is like a really bad time for something to be up at Ferrari, because like you said, they could jump, like both their drivers could jump McLaren drivers in the Drivers' Championship, but also the Constructors. They could win the Constructors' Championship, and of course that comes with a lot of money, not like Ferrari needed, but also Ferrari has a history that they always want these things. They always feel like they have a right to be number one because they are such a historical team. And if it comes down to like their drivers beefing. Like, that's not a good thing, you know. Like
right.
Charles cooked his tires trying to go after George, and then there was this weird battle between both of them where it was like, all right, let Charles through, and then Carlos was like, no, never mind, I'm just gonna bounce, like I'm gonna pass him. And then Charles was really upset after the race, or at least on the radio as they're doing his cool down lap. Like, yeah, man, we found out a lot about Ferrari that we did not know, and I'm kind of shook with just 2 races left.
Yeah, and I think I sent you guys the full radio thing, and I thought it was a joke.
Yeah.
I thought it was like an AI generator. I was like, I don't know if this is real or not, but if it's real, oh my goodness, because did not expect to see that coming out of Ferrari or out of Leclerc, especially given how much they have done to get to this point, right? How great they've been the last month and a half to get to a position where they're just 24 points out of claiming the constructor. So yeah, it would be really bad to see the finish line, know you can overtake your opponent to go for it, and it's squabble up time. That's what does you in.
And I'm not gonna lie, I don't know the source of this beef because it was all just unveiled on a radio when it probably shouldn't have been. So I don't really know the source of it, but it's like, is this Ferrari dysfunction, or is this just Carlos being like, whatever, I'm leaving, y'all can't control me? Like, if it's that, then okay, everything settles down in 2025. But if it's deeper seated, like concern within the team, that's not great, because Lewis Hamilton's going to be your teammate next season. And that, as much as I like Carlos Sainz, Lewis is a different entity.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny because you mentioned the radio, and it was clear that Charles was trying to say what he said, but he didn't know he was hot mic'd, right? He didn't know the mic was completely on because he said all that, and like you could tell the Ferrari people were like, yo, chill, like we can hear you. And he just kept going. Then he kind of looked down, was like, oh, my bad, I saw I was on Mike, so my apologies for cursing. Like, that's all he really said. He's like, I meant what I said, but I just didn't know that the kiddies were going to hear this too, so my bad for telling that, keeping it raw.
Yeah, so that's definitely going to be like a thing I'm paying attention to. Like, how did the Ferraris interact? Do we hear any more weird radio calls? Probably not, but how did things manifest on track? Those two have been near each other quite often, and Carlos has, even a few races ago, 3 Grand Prix ago, he was battling, and what was it, Austin? He was battling with Charles as well, I believe, in a sprint race as well. That was kind of when they both fell back a little bit, and Charles was not happy there. He was like, can he stop? Because we're going to cook our tires, and they did. They didn't have the time the grip to fight back and get further up the grid in the finishing order. So, yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens, because they have 2 races where points will be on the line, and that's 2 opportunities for those 2 to come together on the track, and that can just be really, really interesting, depending on what happens. I'm also going to look at the race for 6th. This became a thing because of Alpine's ridiculous 2-3 finish in Brazil at Interlagos. Heavily rain-aided, heavily red flag-aided, heavily aided. Doesn't matter. They did a 2-3. They jumped up, had a massive leap in points. They got to 6th, and then 1 race later, they're down to 7th, and they could slip even further. So it was a real mirage situation for them, where I bet you they wished like the season ended with Brazil and they didn't have to race anymore, especially because Pierre Gasly's engine apparently blew up last race in Vegas. So that's not great for them, because any sort of points would have kept them at least tied with Haas, or probably ahead of Haas, even though Haas scored points in that race. So Here it is, the race for 6th. This is also one of those like mid-table battles that I really love. Haas is in sixth position right now, 50 points. Alpine, 49 points, and then Visa, Cash App, Zelle, Venmo, whatever, RB, is 46 points. I'm loving this battle. Yeah, and again, like you said, it only takes one driver, one moment to leapfrog everybody else. And if you remember when they took 2-3 at Interlagos, Alpine people were celebrating, and like everyone was just basically saying like they've just won themselves 6th place, because it felt like that it was at least a given that, hey, they're going to ride this wave. And I think unfortunately for them, it was right before the 2-week break before Vegas, and then they came back and they forgot how to put their training wheels on in Vegas. So
this is something where when we talk about some of these different drivers, like literally one driver can change the course of 3 different people on the same side, just like kind of Pierre Gasly. As I mentioned, you could shoot yourself in the foot very quickly and take your whole team out of a race because of something that you did. So I'm interested in seeing which of those 3 teams, if there's a driver on one of those teams that steps up and does something a little bit better. Hey, for Ocon or Gasly, do they overcome each other, right? They had their own squabble, right? They settled it for like 1 week, and look what happened. And then they went right back to squabbling. So it's interesting to see if that will be the case.
Yeah, and we can't forget that in Las Vegas, Gasly qualified 3. He was P3 on the grid, which is why that engine blowup was really unfortunate, because it would have been interesting to see where he could have gone. I mean, I think race pace, we saw that the Mercedes were just too fast. They ended up 1-2, and one of them started from 10th. Like, that was just always going to be a problem. But, like, I wonder where that Alpine would have ended up, and if it could have ended up anywhere within the top 5. That's another boatload of points that keeps them in 6th and maybe with a little bit more cushion. So I'm really, really intrigued to kind of see, is that legit pace? Did they figure something out for real? Can they keep the engine running for an entire race and not blowing up? Because if they can, they might have a chance to still get back into that 6th spot, even though I don't know, man. I've been all season, I've just getting kind of like surprised at Haas. I'm not a big Haas fan, but seeing a Haas in Q3 just makes me happy, and it's happened a lot more often than I would have predicted. So I kind of hope they stay there, because their whole setup just makes no sense to me. But I'm kind of interested to see what Gasly and Ocon can do with Alpine.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, Haas, like, Nico Hülkenberg, all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, Hülkenberg's like 8th, he's 6th, he's 10th,
Yep.
He's right there. He's getting, again, a point here, a point there, 2 points here. And that's what's adding up. And it feels like the other teams, like VCarb, I don't know that they got the horses to handle that, because, again, they haven't proven to have 1 week where they just figure it out. And also, they were trying to help out Max and Red Bull. So again, maybe that's their strategy, right? Is, hey, do we need to put all of our stuff to the back burner to see if we can get Red Bull back into the constructors race, which they're further behind? Or is it, hey, we're going to settle on 3rd, that's going to be fine, let's just go after 6th place with VCarb?
Now, Donald, you know the problem with Red Bull getting back in the constructors. It takes 2 drivers. And Checo, my guy, Checo.
But there's 4. That's the thing, is they have 4 drivers and they're still in 3rd place.
But only one is getting points for Red Bull Racing. That's the problem.
Right.
Like, if they could tack on the VCAR points, maybe, but I don't think they can.
Hey, Silencio with that. They're going to try.
Christian Horner sending an email right now. Yeah.
Hey, I have a brilliant idea.
I know,
Stop
right?
it. Tell me to shut up if you don't like it, but here it goes.
Just want to float this by you. Oh my God, I hate it. Okay, the one thing I did want to talk about with VCarb though is that Yuki is on one. He had the funny response about him shitting his pants when he hit the speed limit thing as well. But he's also been he scored points. He got 2 points. He finished 9th. Liam Lawson finished 16th, as you mentioned. Liam Lawson struggled last year at this race, and so it looks like he has to bounce back, but he has kind of a bad memory, I suppose, of this race that could motivate him. He does seem to be that kind of character. But also, Yuki, for all the Red Bull driver shuffling that's been happening, and maybe thinking about, do we bring in Colapinto? Who else do we get in? Maybe do we get in on Carlos Sainz? Do we just never say our bad, like, let's buy him out of that Williams before he's even steps into Williams, and maybe we get Carlos Sainz in here? Like, there's been so many rumors about what Red Bull might do, and Yuki is right there. Been right there the entire time. They put multiple teammates next to him, and he crushes.
He's the constant.
He dominates.
Yeah.
And so, it sounds like he's on a mission, because I think he straight up said that after Vegas, like, I destroyed my teammates. And it was just like, damn, Yuki. But I think he's trying to prove a point, and I don't know, like, the racing is certainly proving a point, but it's just something else, and I don't know what it's going to take, but I'm excited to see a super motivated Yuki in these last 2 races.
Yeah, and we actually starting to see the driving, like him backing up with the driving, right? We've heard him say a lot of stuff, and then the driving is on the other spectrum, and you're like, no, this isn't computing. But now he's starting. Like you say, I'm on a mission. His driving is starting to back that up a little bit. So I'm interested to see where it goes. It's unfortunate that it's at the end of the season, but hey, like maybe this is something that can ride the wave, and as you mentioned, maybe it means that he could be in that driver's seat for Red Bull very much sooner than you would think.
Yeah. So there's a lot to look forward to in this race. It's going to be an interesting race. Obviously, like we keep saying, it's the last sprint race of the calendar. So a lot more points up for grab than would normally be in a normal race weekend. So excited to see what happens in this race. The last thing we have to do before we get out of here, because we do it, it's a thing, it's a staple of what we do. The Zoomy Boy and the Gloomy Boy, we have to give our predictions because the weekend sometimes goes very well. As we mentioned, there's multiple ways that you can excel. It's not just who wins the race. It's multiple ways that you can have a good weekend, and there's multiple ways you can have a bad weekend. And so we got to try to predict who's going to have a good one, who's going to have a bad one. So, Donald, let's start with the positive before we get into the hating. Zoomy Boy, Donald, who you got for your Zoomy Boy of this weekend?
Okay, so last week, I said my Zoomy Boy was going to be Lewis Hamilton, and I just said, I don't know. I have this gut feeling that he's going to do well. And sure enough, he dominated literally all weekend with the exception of one turn on Q3 lap. And he did do it well. I have that similar feeling about Charles Leclerc. Like, I don't know what it is. We just talked trash about what he was saying and the turmoil that he has with his teammate for 5 minutes, and after all that, I'm going to tell you that I have this feeling that Leclerc is going to win this race. I just have that feeling, and maybe again, it's the Constructors' Championship and him thinking that I can be the hero and I can bring this home for Ferrari, right? The greatest team ever. I can bring this home and be labeled a hero in Ferrari circles forever because I had this moment at Qatar to seal it for him. And so I wonder if that's the case. But I think Leclerc has a lot on his plate, and I think he's going to take it out on this course.
I love that pick, especially because if I would guess anything after those radio messages, Leclerc is done playing the nice game, right?
Exactly.
I think he's like, all right, if this is the way it's going to be, fine. Like 2 races left, I can be an asshole on the track too. So I think that's a good one, and hopefully they don't run into each other. But I think Leclerc is consistently faster driver than Carlos. Carlos can put it together on occasion, but I think Leclerc, when he's on it, that dude is super, super quick. So yeah, I think that's a good one. All right, Donald, you ready for mine?
Yeah.
I did a little digging for mine, okay? All right. Mercedes in Vegas, a 1-2, with one of the cars coming from 10th to the 2nd spot. This is not a coincidence, okay? We have seen this from Mercedes throughout this year. Mercedes, that car is a snow bunny. I don't know how they did it, but they created a racing car that absolutely loves cooler temperatures. What did we just say at the top? This is not going to be the over 100-degree race that it was last year. It's going to be 77 degrees, and it's not cool like Vegas was fit in the 50s, but it's decent. So I did some research, okay? Every single time Mercedes had a good result, here are the temperatures. Canada, 65 degrees. They finished 3rd and 4th. Russell was 3rd. Barcelona, 75 degrees. They finished 3rd and 4th. Hamilton was 3rd. Austria, 75 degrees. 1st and 4th, Russell was 1st. Silverstone, Lewis Hamilton won. 65 degrees, Russell had a DNF. Austria, 86 degrees. That's the warmest one that they had. Lewis Hamilton was 3rd, and George Russell was 8th. Spa, 70 degrees. Lewis Hamilton won that one. It was a Russell disqualification. He actually won it, but then the car ended up being what it was on. So it was a disqualification.
But they finished 1-2 essentially before the DQ.
Exactly. So Lewis was in position to win it because they finished 1-2. And then, of course, Vegas with the 1-2. Again, 77 degrees for this race. I'm going with Mercedes all weekend. I don't know what is up with that car, but that car loves it when it's under 80 degrees. or maybe even like 86. Like I said, they have that one standout 86-degree weekend. But apart from that, when it's under 80 degrees, they get themselves in podium positions. They get themselves high up the grid, and they have all of their wins have been in cold weather climates for the race. And this won't be super cold, but it ain't going to be 100 degrees. I'm going with Mercedes. I think that Snow Bunny. Plus, again, you can't change too much in your car given 1 week. And if you're gonna like pick up a car, take it from Vegas to Qatar, and you just perform well, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna say Mercedes again. I don't know if it's gonna be another 1-2, but I'm backing them to score some serious points again.
I like the pick. I really do. And I think it's because of the fact that, like you mentioned, it's just 1 week. They're picking up a car that is on fire and dropping it in the Middle East and going, continue to be on fire. It's very simple with few tweaks. They don't have to do much. So yeah, I like that. I like the pick. And also, they're point stealers at this point for the top three.
Yep.
So I know they like playing the spoiler.
Yeah, I was going to say that's another thing that could end up, like we talked about the on-track battle between Ferrari and McLaren, but just like what we saw in Vegas, like if Mercedes gets in the way, then they're not picking up enough points. They actually need like McLaren or Ferrari need to put those Mercedes in between themselves and the other team they're battling with. And if Mercedes keeps rolling at the top, then that's going to be really hard to do. All right, let's get sad. Let's do hater hours. It is the year of the hater. So we're going to talk about the gloomy boy. Who do we think is going to have a bad weekend? Donald, who you got?
I got Esteban Ocon. Again, the Alpine race for 6th. I said somebody is going to figure out a way to take it out, to eliminate themselves. Ocon, I think, is going to be that driver. I don't know. Again, he has not shown evidence that he is willing to step up and get, other than the 1 week, right, to step up and say, okay, my teammate's not doing well, but I can get these points. It feels like if Gasly's 12th, Ocon's like 15th. If Gasly's 11th, Ocon's like 17th. So I think this is a week where, again, Alpine with a lot of pressure, and somebody has to fail. I'm sorry, man. I think it's Ocon.
A lot of pressure and somebody has to fail. I love that. And that's also brutal. Sorry, Esteban. But, keep your head on a swivel this weekend. Hopefully it's not you, but we'll see. We'll see. When we do our race review, we'll see what happened. All right. I'm going to give my gloomy boy, and I'm going to do a little bit of something different. I'm going to make it plural. I'm going to make it gloomy boys. Williams Mechanics. If they have to rebuild another car, I fully back them walking out of the garage and just quitting until 2025. The season is over. We're not in a battle or anything for points. We are where we are. That's it. Anybody wrecks a car, I would be talking to them straight up. Both drivers, put them against the wall and be like, listen, you break that car again, that's it. We're done.
Y'all fixed it.
Yeah, you get on the ground. You fix this car. You get the wrench in your hand, right? I'm just one more time. I do not want to see another Williams in pieces on another weekend. So please, for the Williams mechanics, please don't put them in the wall. But if they do, they're gonna be real sad, and I'll be fine if they just straight up walk out the garage.
The mechanics are the Bojangles worker meme from COVID. That's all of them at this point. Right. They're like, not again. Like, come on, man. I just want to sit here and just do the pit stop thing. That's all I want to do. Just do the pit stop thing. That I don't want to work all week for you to mess it up in one turn. I just want one day where I just do the pit crew. Oh, 3 seconds, cool. It's a little long, but I'm done for the weekend. That's all I want to do. And still, they're just in the lab. And I really believe that they're going to be a point where they're going to be like, look. That's a wrench. That's a nail gun. That's a clock. You're on it. So goodbye. We're at the restaurant. Eat.
Yeah, I feel so bad for them. They've put in so much work. They don't get paid overtime. So I'm just real sad about them. I'm just like, hey, listen, Williams, if y'all got to come in 19th and 20th, I don't care. Don't crash the car. That's all we care about this weekend. No more money will be spent putting your cars together, and that's labor included.
labor definitely not included.
Right, exactly. All right, I think that's it. Let me run through when the every session is, because again, it is a kind of a unique weekend with it being a sprint weekend. So you only have one practice session as opposed to 3. And that practice session is Friday, 8:25 a.m. Eastern. Get up after you got all that turkey in your stomach and watch some F1 practice. ESPNU, ESPN3, ESPN Deportes is where you can find free practice 1. And then later in the day at a more reasonable time. If you're going to sleep in, fine. It's okay, because sprint qualifying is the same day. Friday, 12:25 p.m. That's ESPN News, ESPN Plus, and ESPN Deportes. And then Saturday, you have another back-to-back. You got the sprint race is 8:55 a.m. on Saturday, so you definitely got to get up for that. That one's on ESPN2. And then 12:55 p.m., same day, Saturday, Grand Prix qualifying, ESPN News and ESPN Plus. And then the Grand Prix is Sunday at 9:30 a.m. on ESPN2, and there are 2 replays of this race happening on ESPN channels, 8:30 p.m. on ESPN2 and 11 p.m. on ESPN News for some reason, just in case you want to watch it again. I guess they're expecting this race to be really good, because I don't think I've seen 2 replays. And
I mean, it's Thanksgiving weekend. They're like, give him something to watch.
Right.
Oh, you missed it again. Oh, you missed that again. Like, so.
Especially when 8:30 p.m. and then 11. Like, basically, once the one's over, you can just roll straight into restarting the race. Like, I don't know. I guess I hope it's a good enough race to watch it again. We'll see.
For sure. Yeah, let's hope it is. Yeah.
Right. Seriously. So, yeah, that's all to look forward to. We will, of course, be back with a review of the race. And, of course, because it is a triple header that ends the season, we have the final race in Abu Dhabi coming up the following weekend. So we'll also do a preview for that. And then once we're in the off season, we got some fun stuff planned. We're going to review some Drive to Survive when it comes back out. We'll talk about that as well. We'll get into some books about F1. We'll get into new regulations in 2026. We got a lot of stuff coming up. But races first. The season's not over. Hoping this Qatar race is good enough to warrant 2 replays from ESPN. And then we will see. So for Donald, I'm André Carlisle. We will see y'all after the race to talk about it. Vroom, vroom.
Vroom, vroom.